On BBC One. With EastEnders coming up in an hour. Now, though, 1 year on from the UK's first lockdown, Naga, Munchetty and Nick Robinson ask, what's next?
Hello, we're inside a mass vaccination centre in Newcastle.
A year ago, the Prime Minister told us to stay at home and announced the first UK lockdown. Tonight, many believe, hope, that a year on we've reached the beginning of the end of this crisis.
Over the next hour, we'll look to the future, talk to experts and hear from those on the front line to ask the big questions about what sort of world we're emerging into.
Welcome to Lockdown Live. What next?
You must stay at home.
These measures are essential.
You are playing a critical role.
We can do this.
These steps are not requests, they are rules.
Can you all go home, please? It's not a holiday.
While we may have more still to endure, better days will return.
It's about feeling good, it's about mental health.
We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
I've developed mild symptoms.
The Prime Minister is tonight in intensive care.
The NHS has saved my life.
The messaging's been all over the place. Work at home, don't work at home, go out to eat, don't go out to eat.
The virus is spreading even faster.
A great day for science and humanity.
Another one has emerged. There's been another breakthrough in the fight against coronavirus.
We cannot continue with Christmas as planned.
The virus is out of control.
More than 100,000 deaths.
Half of all adults have now been vaccinated.
This roadmap should be cautious, but irreversible.
Hello and welcome. We're inside the Life Science Centre in Newcastle. Usually a busy museum, but for the last few months it's been transformed into a mass vaccination hub.
Injections are happening in the next room right now, and as we speak, people from this city and surrounding areas are lining up to take their turn for the jab. We're going to meet some of them later. Amongst them is Stuart Armstrong, who's in the queue. Stuart, hello. Give us a wave.
Hello, Stuart.
We met Stuart before we came on air. We're going to be catching up with him in just a few minutes.
We've worked very closely, of course, with the NHS to ensure that we're complying with all the COVID safety rules to bring this special show from here, so we can see for ourselves the vaccination programme, which many believe is one of the keys to unlocking society and getting back towards something like normal. Tonight, we'll ask what that normal might actually look like. We'll hear over the next hour from NHS bosses, from business leaders and some of those who are preparing for the next stage of the pandemic.
And later on, we'll ask the Health Secretary what the future has in store, and we'll speak to the Archbishop of Canterbury as the nation prepares to mark a moment of reflection at 8 o'clock.
First, though, another reason that we've come here to Newcastle is this was the first city in the UK to treat the very first COVID case. And the man who treated that case joins us here, Dr. Matthias Schmidt, who's of the Royal Victoria Infirmary here in Newcastle. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you for inviting me.
When you were confronted by those first two cases of COVID, do you have any idea the scale of what we were all about to face?
The honest answer is I thought it would get much worse when we just had the first cases, but we didn't know it would be going so rapidly and so rampantly over the next few weeks that we had an NHS almost collapse, and we had to really take all the stops to look after patients.
That was the problem, was it? Because we didn't know it would be so fast, it meant we didn't have the time to prepare.
We didn't, and maybe we should have prepared earlier or a bit more, but we were there to enable the country to be better prepared ultimately, because we were one of those specialist units.
Now, we know that we had a first wave, we had a second wave. In many ways, we had, with that faster developing variant in Kent, a third wave as well. It's getting better now. Do you begin to see the end, or do you think that's complacent?
I don't think it's complacent. Everybody wants the end. I think we are getting better. We're not there yet, though. It's going to take another 6 to 12 months, or it will take at least that we are going to make changes to our life. We have to, as a social team, as a social country, we have to work better together.
It is a long haul, in other words.
It is, yes.
Dr. Schmidt, thank you for joining us and thank you for what you did all those months ago.
Thank you.
So, it was a year ago tonight that Boris Johnson addressed the nation to impose that first lockdown. Since then, leaders of the 4 UK nations have taken, at times, different pathways through, in which it was never quite clear what was winning, humanity or the virus.
A year on, people across Britain, many are hopeful that this lockdown might actually be the last. But how likely is that? And how are people feeling now? I went to one of the hardest hit cities, Leicester, to find out.
But pride is certainly at stake. We're all set for kick-off.
Not since March 2020, more than a year ago.
The goal! What a finish!
The fans been allowed into this stadium.
The whistle goes.
No one who came to this stadium a year ago would have believed you if you'd said there won't be any fans here for more than 12 months. No one in this city would have believed you if you'd said you won't be able to mix in someone else's house for a year. But this city has lived under more restrictions than any other. Leicester is the lockdown capital of Britain.
Football's crazy in here.
Ray, the landlord of the Crow's Nest, will never forget the night this pub closed for lockdown.
They started singing We'll Meet Again, you know, we don't know where, we don't know when. Everybody were joining hands, and it was so unreal, you know, because we didn't have the social distancing then either, so it was party.
But the party stopped abruptly. Since then, more than 1,400 people have died of COVID in this city's hospitals alone. What's the reason? One of the government's key advisors lives and works here.
This virus loves people who move around. Leicester is a microcosm, quite complex. We have people of ethnic minorities in this area that we're in at the moment. We have other areas where we have deprived populations, mainly white populations. And we've had impact in certain times during the ethnic areas, other times it's been in the white deprived populations.
The Golden Mile in Leicester is normally humming. Now it's almost empty.
So we'll get this lovely turquoisey green sari.
Karen is counting the days until he can throw open his doors again.
I am shaking in my boots, just looking forward. I'm excited. I'm like a little kid in a candy shop, put it that way. I'm just looking forward to it so much, just to get back to normal life, get back to normal routine, and also just to see our customers again.
Thank you so much.
Nisha is not convinced that this will be the last lockdown. I sense you can't quite believe that this place will fill again. Is that a real worry?
I mean, I think the pandemic's really kind of knocked us for six, and we feel kind of quite nervous. You really want to be optimistic, but it's just that fear that we can't.
Leicester, like the rest of the country, is in a race between the virus and the vaccines. Infection rates here are staying stubbornly high, and that matters wherever you live.
If you have high rates in one area, they will eventually spread to low rate areas. And that's why we need to get the virus down completely if we're going to get back to any form of normality.
Normality. That's what we all crave. A return to how things used to be. You've said we'll meet again.
Yeah. It's going to be the biggest party you've ever seen here because we've missed so much.
If everything goes to plan, the hope is these seats will have fans in them again in just a few weeks' time. But here, in the national lockdown capital, they know all too well that that is unlikely to represent the final whistle. We may all have to learn to live with this virus. So where does that leave the NHS then, and what can we expect next from the virus?
Well, we're joined now by Nikki Kanani, the NHS's Medical Director for Primary Care in England, and Professor Sir David Spiegelhalter from the University of Cambridge, and he's been analysing the data during the pandemic. Nikki, hello. I mean, it's been quite a year for the NHS. I mean, I think the size says it all. How are things now?
I mean, you're right. It's been a year like no other, incredibly challenging. But as you saw there, the vaccination programme, the most incredible vaccination programme, gives us all hope. And I think that's what we have to focus on. Our staff have been phenomenal. They've been incredibly agile. But as we look forward, for me as a mum, as much as part of the health service, I've got to believe that this is the way forward and this is our way out of a very difficult year.
Let's turn to Professor Spiegelhalter now. Good evening to you. People are hearing, David, they're hearing numbers, they're hearing charts, they're seeing graphs every day. Try to give us a sense of where we are now compared with the worst days.
Okay, well, we've had a very bad experience. In the first and second waves, the UK has been, the top of this awful league table in terms of deaths in Europe. And the latest data from the Office for National Statistics shows that we've had 150,000 deaths with COVID on the death certificate, and the vast majority of those was the primary cause. So we've come through some very bad circumstances. But at the moment, the indicators are all looking very positive indeed. Deaths are down to just, less than 100 a day, COVID deaths. Cases are down, hospitalizations are down, and so on. And what's actually remarkable, the announcement today from the Office for National Statistics, is that the total death rate in this country is now down below normal from all causes, below the 5-year average. And this is a curious thing, why? Because there's still COVID deaths going on. And, the fact is that non-COVID deaths are running at very low levels in this country at the moment. And a number of reasons, mild winter, no flu, which usually will kill 10, 20,000 more people each winter. But also the very sad thing is that there's a deficit of deaths now because of the people who were taken early a year ago. And the lack of deaths.
People might listen to all that terribly good news that you're giving us. They might hear all that good news and think, given the vaccine is now rolling out so that it's covering the most vulnerable people, isn't that the time now to stop listening to all this talk of a third wave and just relax a bit?
Yeah, it's absolutely inevitable that this would be the argument. That, why can't we open up now? Well, we're at a very delicate stage. Cases have stopped going down. We're stable. There's probably more than 100,000 people in the country with the virus. If we opened up now, it would spread. And okay, many people are protected, although vaccines are not perfect, but it would spread among the half the population who's not vaccinated very rapidly, huge build-up in hospitalizations, and always this risk of the new variants coming over. So I can understand, especially with the government saying we're not going to go back into having more measures again, why they're being so cautious.
Professor David Spiegelhalter, thank you very much for talking to us. Nikki, let's come back to you. Nick's gone off to the vaccine centre. He's going to meet someone who's having a vaccine. You said this is a period of hope, of course, for the NHS as we move into the vaccine programme. But of course, there's been a lot about record waiting times, and the NHS is open for business now. There are backlogs too. How quickly can those be brought back up to speed?
Naga, as you can imagine, last year and through the subsequent waves, we focused on emergency care, cancer care, mental health, diagnostics, rightly clinically prioritising people for care based on clinical priority. But now, as COVID cases are down in the community and in hospitals, we can rightly focus on speeding up, working our way through that backlog. I know as a GP, but my colleagues as well around the country are just desperate to get people seen and cared for. So my message to the public is, please come forward if you've got worrying symptoms.
Are you concerned about the hidden costs of this pandemic?
I am. I'm concerned about the mental health impact, the longer-term physical impact. But the one thing we've said through the pandemic and through the vaccination programme is your NHS is here for you, and we have to remember that. That is the one overriding phenomenal part of everything that we've been through together is our NHS and our staff.
Well, to pick up on the staff, when I've spoken to NHS staff, one of the great things to come out of the pandemic, and it's not just NHS staff, it's people. It's that camaraderie. It's that feeling of people caring a little bit more. Do you think that's one of the things we can take forward?
I absolutely know it will be. I was at a vaccination service today, the Newcastle Racecourse, and we had retired nurses and doctors, and we had local authority librarian staff running the admin centre. We had fire and rescue helping to operate the stagecoach buses to go out into the community to make sure that people got their vaccines. That feeling is unbeatable, and I'm very proud to be part of it.
Nikki Kanani, it's good to talk to you, and let's just hope that feeling continues and that camaraderie does too. Now, throughout the programme this evening, we're going to take time to recognise some of the remarkable stories of resilience from some of our key workers. Well, we caught up with Nancy Jarira, who's a community public health nurse who captured the nation's hearts when she appeared on the BBC documentary Hospital, filmed at London's Royal Free, where she there fought her own battle against COVID.
My family, my daughter, had been told 40-60 chance of life. I lost a full month unconscious in Royal Free Hospital. When I came round, I said, oh, I need to phone my daughter. It's her birthday tomorrow. They said, what day is it? I said, it's on the 9th of March. So they all looked at each other. And someone came to my bedside. We are in April now. I saw on that line when I was walking out, nurses from all walks of life, from everywhere in the world. Every color was there, every sex as well. They were all wishing me out because they knew how ill I had been. I was one of those that was walking out of their ward.
I am truly, truly grateful. We are indebted to a lot of you who've left their families so far away, and you are here to help us. Please, just hold on a little bit more. We shall overcome this.
I walked out. I'd survived something. I'm well, and I must act on being well.
That's your vaccination card. First dose.
I'm better. I'm back working. I've had my first vaccine. And my colleagues, the nurses, have really put their lives on the line. I can say that for sure. I was so proud that I am a nurse and I'm still working as a nurse. And as long as I'm still strong, I'll work.
Well, I've just come down the corridor to where the vaccines are actually being delivered here in city centre Newcastle. You can see there's a few gaps here as people are waiting. Other people are beginning to get their jabs. But let's see if we can catch up with Stuart, who we saw at the beginning, who is about to have his jab. And is he worried? I don't know. Stuart, hi. Hi also to Nishat, who's going to carry out the jab. Concerned or excited, Stuart?
Very excited.
Not worried about the jab?
Not at all. Not at all.
The truth is, Nishat, this is pretty simple procedure, isn't it?
It's pretty simple. Do you know what it is? When patients come in, they're a bit nervous, thinking it's going to be a long process, but it's just so quick that they'll be like, is that it? And I'm like, that's it.
Well, we're going to prove that now because you're going to give Stuart the jab. For people who don't like looking at jabs, I'll just take a step this way and you'll see just quite how quickly it happens. People are in and out really quickly. The only thing that delays them, as we'll see in just a second, is they just have to take a few minutes to check they're okay. Are we done? That was it. Yeah, there are people who would think it was much tougher. And how do you feel now you've had it?
I feel good. I feel, happy that I can get on with doing a few more things later on down the line.
God, give us the dream. When you're allowed to, what do you want to do?
I should say spend more time with the family, take them out, but I think golf's the main one for me.
Bit of golf,
yeah.
Beer with a friend. Nisha, thank you very much as well. Stuart, good luck. So if we come down here, you'll see where Stuart is about to go, where other people who've had their jab tonight are, which is just a little waiting room. If you've had your jab, you'll know this. But if you haven't, you just sit here for 15 minutes. Everybody's happy. This gentleman looks happy because they know that it gives them some real protection.
And that's what it's about. That is absolutely what it's about. Well, this week, the UK passed the milestone of giving the first jabs to half the adult population. And tonight, more than 28 million people have had that first injection. So how's the vaccination programme going to change the way we live? Well, I'm joined now by Caroline Lamb, who's the Chief Executive of NHS Scotland and was the head of Scotland's vaccine programme, and also by Irim Ali, who's a Labour councillor here in Newcastle who leads an outreach programme among communities with high rates of vaccine hesitancy. Caroline, good evening to you. You've been part of the rollout of the vaccine. Has it surpassed your expectations?
It absolutely has surpassed my expectations. I think when we started preparing for the prospect of a vaccine, first of all, there were those who were sceptical that we would actually be able to start vaccinating people in early December. And then the idea that we would have achieved such a high coverage already by the middle of March is just phenomenal. And it's a huge tribute to everybody who's worked so hard on the programme. I have to say that I was very lucky, and coincidentally I had my vaccine myself this morning, and it was just fabulous to see such a slickly run operation. That was in Edinburgh at the International Conference Centre, and it's maybe one of the advantages of being the wrong side of 50.
Well, at least there are some. Of course, we're hearing as people are seeing vaccine centres like this one, moving on and the operation being swift, but however, we've heard of supply problems as well over the past few days. How do you think that's going to affect, or what mean for people who are waiting for their jabs?
So it's an immensely complex programme. The logistics associated with managing what is a bit of a lumpy and bumpy supply of vaccine, alongside ensuring that we've got the venues, that we've got the vaccinators, and that we are able to properly schedule people to come to those clinics. So it's all been complex, and I'm really proud of the way that our system has flexed and adapted, and that we're able to move our bookings. So some weeks we're able to book more people, and other weeks we have to just slow down a bit. We're also very conscious at the moment of ensuring that everybody who's starting to fall due for their second dose of the vaccination is getting that. So there will be variations in the numbers of vaccines that we're able to deliver each week. However, at the moment, we're still confident that we will hit the target of vaccinating all the JCVI priority groups by the middle of April, and then quickly move on after that to the rest of the population.
Well, Nick, you're back, and you've seen just how excited some people are with the vaccines.
Excited in a way how simple it is, and I wanted to ask you that, Councillor Irim Ali, as well, which is, you'll know there are some people who are very nervous indeed. Do you feel that when you can have the conversations, you are beginning to be able to chip away at that anxiety?
Yes, absolutely. We've seen a whole variety of different issues that have come to light amongst our communities. Some of them are simply rumours, but some of them have legitimate reasons of concern. Amongst those have been that the vaccine can change your DNA, that perhaps there is some form of a mechanism that there's a chip inside you and you can be tracked. And then issues of fertility, that it can affect your fertility, and the side effects. So one of the things we've tried to do from the council is, by recruiting community champions and making sure that key messages are going out into our communities, to try and alleviate some of those fears so that people can make informed choices about whether to have the vaccine or not.
Also, I think speaking to a lot of GPs who have connections with the communities around them going to homes has made a difference as well. But I wonder if at the beginning there's always hesitancy about something new. Has that dissipated a bit now?
It is starting to dissipate, yes. So the more we're able to have conversations with people, and we're doing a lot of work in terms of having information in different languages, in different formats, using social media platforms to do that, we are finding more people are taking up the vaccine. And many conversations that I've had with people have been about people just being able to use me as a sounding board and just to make that decision of whether they want the vaccine or not. So, and you know, some people fear needles, just generally fear needles. So I think it's been a combination of different reasons why people have been hesitant in taking the vaccine. But I'm confident that that will start to change in the near future.
Caroline Lamb, if I could bring you back in, you will know a lot of people get a card like this little vaccination card that I'm holding up, and some of them think it should work a bit like a passport, that they, when they go to a bar or a cafe or a restaurant, they want to go on holiday, that they ought to be able to wave the card, or maybe something smarter, an app on a phone, and say, well, look, I'm safe, let me get on with my life. What's the argument against that?
We're still in very early days in this vaccination programme, and we still don't know everything that we need to know and to understand about how effective the vaccine is in preventing transmission, how effective it is against other variants of the virus, and importantly, how long it gives us protection for. So there's a lot of those things to be worked through and more research to be done. However, at the same time, in the background, I know that we're all working very hard to ensure that when the time is right, that we're able to provide technological solutions that mean that people can access the data about their vaccinations and indeed about their tests and other matters, which we know people will be wanting to do.
Caroline, how do you assure people there are going to be those who have it, half of all UK adults have had it, had their first jab, and those who don't? How do you assure people that we're not heading in for a two-tier society, those who have some freedom and those who don't?
So I think that's a critical element as well, and that's one of our concerns when we hear vaccine passports or vaccine certification mentioned, that we need to be really careful about some of the equality and the human rights aspects associated with this, and absolutely ensure that we're not creating or exacerbating inequalities in the way in which we approach this.
Caroline Lamb, CEO of NHS Scotland, and Ira Marley, a councillor here in Newcastle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Time for another of our key worker stories. This time we meet Dylan Rickson from North Wales. He's a support worker for the Deafness Support Network, which cares for deaf people and other people with complex needs in Cheshire. When the pandemic hit, he decided to leave his family and move into the residential home to protect them and himself. He's lived on site for the last year.
I moved in for a year today. I remember this because a week or two ahead now. It's my birthday, funny enough. And last year, I was celebrating my 24th birthday with the tenants. We got a cake from the shops and it was just nice. At the age of 2.5, I had meningitis, which left me with a low immune system. 2 years prior, I had a mild heart attack. When the first lockdown was announced, I was slightly worried for my own sake, as well as the tenants, because I was putting their lives at risk, getting the train back and to. I also took that decision in mind that with me being here every day, I could be sort of in their shoes. So they would see me every day, I see them every day. So on my days off, I go for some walks around the area. In my bedroom, I watch maybe a bit of Netflix or something. Talk to friends and family. I suppose there was a time in my head I thought I've given and done as much as I can. It's been difficult for us all. I think just getting me through is just the staff really. I think they've sort of, in a way, become family to me. So with birthday coming, I won't be at the care home. I've bought myself a place just not far from here. I think the weather's nice now for definitely get the barbecues going on.
That's a very nice thought, isn't it? We're going to take a look now at what the future might actually bring. After the last year, where are we psychologically as a society? To help us understand things a little bit, the BBC commissioned some polling to see how people think their lives will change because of the crisis.
Let's take a look at some of the findings. Well, first off, 40% of people think that they will walk more often in the year ahead. A quarter said they wouldn't commute to work as much, and a third said they'd be working from home just a bit more.
And our lifestyles have been impacted too. Almost a third of people think they will shop more locally. Just over a quarter say that they're going to fly less, and around about a third will talk to family members more. At least some good news, I guess, from the pandemic.
Definitely. Now, it's just a snapshot. To find out a little more about how people are feeling as we stand, we're on the cusp, aren't we, of easing of lockdown, I've been to Cardiff.
Ti'n gweld I Benedict, dych chi'n mynd holl fod lawr? Mae'n fel hosepipe neu rhywbeth, ydw e? Mae'n fel Hoover.
Marley and Clou George have been back at school for 2 weeks. Same school, but now they have separate pickups and drop-offs, separate playtimes. Although excited about a return to normal, the George family is still anxious.
Do you worry at all about crowds?
I do, if I'm honest with you. Whenever we even out today, holding on to the children. Other people don't tend to socially distance. I think they forget once they're out.
What was it like seeing your friends again?
Claire was really scared. I'm not going too close to them. And then I was like, you're allowed to.
You were worried, weren't you?
What were you worried about, Clau?
I was worried about us catching COVID.
We've had to explain to them why they can't see their grandparents, why they can't do this. And so we've tried to be as honest as we can. And obviously, one of the drawbacks of that is they are much more aware of the actual dangers.
Infection rates here in Wales are slightly lower than the UK's other 3 nations. Earlier this month, things moved from a stay-at-home order to a stay-local order. Outdoor sporting activities are open once again.
Hello, nice to see you.
Although I travelled across the border to get here, I was given special permission by the Welsh Government to join Lindsay and Simon for a round of golf.
Great shot. How happy are you about moving back to the old ways?
Well, it is going to be a big change, isn't it? Because it's been a long time since it's been normal. But I think this helps, definitely.
Dotted across the usually busy course are pairs of players who haven't seen each other in months, getting back into the swing.
Golf is a great part of it, obviously, but the social side, we have lots of functions up here, and it's just lovely to be able to meet up, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Do you know what I'm looking forward to? The 19th hole.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
That needs to open soon, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Absolutely. One day.
That first round of golf, that first pint with friends, everyone here is excited about a return to normal. But amongst some, there is a sense that after a year of COVID restrictions, change needs to be gradual.
From a behavioural side of things, we want to make sure that people have time to gradually adapt to these behaviours where they're quite fundamental to us as human beings, whether that's hugs and handshakes and physical touch, which we've had to quite rapidly do away with almost over the last 12 months.
So we're going to go see Nanny now and just drop some things over to her, OK?
Jen's dad has been shielding since he had a heart attack last year. He's had his second vaccination, and the family's counting down the days until it's safe for them all to be together again.
Presents for Nanny.
Yeah. Oh.
So lovely seeing this family, seeing their nan, but they haven't been able to hug yet. And this is what people are looking forward to, the simplest things in life. We're going to get there, just not yet. What does the future look like? Do the UK's various roadmaps out of lockdown lead us to a world that looks like the one we used to know? If it's different, how might we need to adapt?
We're joined now by some people who have a bit of a sense of how things might change and have ideas about how they want them to change. Alongside me is Dame Irene Hayes, who's the boss of Hayes Travel, and next to her is Dorothy Chirwa, who's the president of the Newcastle University Students' Union.
And with me is Richard Warren, who runs the Ken Group, which owns dozens of bars and restaurants around the North East and Scotland. And first, we're going to talk to West End Supremo, Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber, who joins us now. Good evening to you, Andrew. You know, the big plan is open shows, get people back in the theatres. It's about confidence. Are you confident they'll turn up, they'll come?
Well, I think we saw, didn't we, that so many people wanted to book for the music festivals when they announced that they were opening. I can only just hope and pray. You know, every production that we have in the theatre probably employs directly over 300 people, or certainly a large musical certainly does. And we've had such a time with our artists, our musicians, our backstage crew, everybody involved with theatre, the front of house people, all now out of work. But I'm passionate about getting our theatres back again.
It's been said, Andrew, that you would even consider defying social distancing rules, that's what you've told the cast, if the government doesn't listen to your pleas to make it a bit easier for you and others to open up. Is that right?
Well, what I would say is this, is quite simple, is that a big show can't open with social distancing. It simply doesn't work. But what I would say also is that I'm here in the Gillian Lynn Theatre where we've been rehearsing all day with Cinderella, and look at this huge space. And I can promise you that with the ventilation, and I'm going to say that word ventilation again, that you're going to be in a lot purer air inside our theatre than you might be if you were walking up and down Oxford Street. And one of the things that I think drove everybody in the theatre mad last time when lockdown was imposed was the sight of everybody jostling and going into shops and nobody really socially distancing at all. Whereas in our theatres, every single possible measure is taken to make sure that people are safe and secure.
Andrew, how confident are you about the sector? There are so many concerns about theatres closing, about the industry struggling and jobs in the industry struggling. Does it have a future?
Well, that's a very difficult question, and it's one that, in a way, that if I answered in the way that I really don't want to answer, I'd have to say, you know, I don't even want to think about addressing it, because I mean, the absolute disaster that would happen is almost incalculable. I mean, we obviously can't go on like this with our theatres closed for very much longer. And I don't even want to think about the consequences. I want to be positive. I want to get our theatres back open. I want to demonstrate to government, to Public Health England, that we can. I believe we have. And I think it's vital that we understand that our spaces are properly ventilated and we really do care about our customers. You know, one of the things, I was just listening to your programme earlier, one of the reasons I volunteered for the Oxford AstraZeneca trial last year is because I really wanted to see for myself what the effects of the vaccine might be on me. And I can honestly tell you, I'm very pleased to know that I did have the vaccine and the proper one, not the placebo, and I had no ill effects at all, and I feel right as rain. The most important thing is that people feel safe and happy and confident, but we've got to get our sector back open again. We just simply have to.
Well, the passion is very evident. Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber, thank you so much for your time with us this evening.
Let's turn now to Dame Irene Hayes of Hayes Travel. I guess you share that passion. You're desperate to get back to business. Yeah. But there may be people saying, well, in the end, a foreign trip, a foreign holiday is a bit of a luxury. Maybe we have to just live without them for another summer.
Yes, well, perhaps for the early part of the summer, it's sounding like. But you know, there are still lots of places in the world which will be open. And then depending upon what we hear from the roadmap, there will be lots of opportunities for other holidays. And in fact, Nick, there is an opportunity to perhaps see some live musicals, because the great news this week is staycations, cruise ships from the top 12 cruise companies in the world are coming to the UK and cruising round the British Isles, and you'll be able to see musicals and cabaret.
And I was just asking earlier whether these little vaccine certificates that we get when we've had our jabs, do you want them to be converted into a kind of passport so that you can say, well, look, if you've had it, you're welcome on our holidays?
Well, I think that would be helpful. And, you know, they've always been there because I remember trying to go to Africa 40 years ago and needed a yellow fever certificate. So certificates for vaccinations have been around for a very, very long time. And I think that is one route into enabling people to be able to travel again.
And Richard, I suppose, you know, you saw the frustration there. There is frustration in so many industries. You own bars and restaurants and hotels. How optimistic are you about opening fully soon?
I think we have to be measured in how optimistic we are, because we need to be realistic. We'll be able to open outdoors first, be able to utilise the outdoor spaces, then go indoors, gradually add more people indoors. But I don't think we can cling on to those exact dates that have already been set out, because they might move back. And we've got a lot of pent-up demand, and we've got a lot of pent-up enthusiasm within the industry. And we'll use that further down the line if we need to. So we're just staying quite realistic and measured.
What about social distancing? It was something that was touched upon by Andrew Lloyd Webber there, about, you know, ventilation, about people being confident about going back. If social distancing remains in place, that's not going to give you the opening up, perhaps, that you were hoping for.
It depends on the venue. The larger places, which don't depend on getting as many people in as possible, perhaps on a Friday and Saturday night, they're going to be able to operate as they did previously. But our industry has always had to adapt because of trends and tastes changing. So if that means that we have to put our minds to good effect by taking on this particular problem, because it's going to last longer maybe, then we'll do that.
Even if it lasts into next year?
If it goes into next year, it does make it a lot harder. But knowing that sooner rather than later gives us the opportunity to deal with it.
Let's turn now to you, Dorothy. Dorothy Cherwa from Newcastle University Student Union. You're hearing people talk about the bars, student-like bars, of course. No doubt you quite fancy a foreign holiday, but is that really what you're passionate about, what the members of your Students' Union are telling you they're passionate about?
I think we all can't wait for things to reopen, such as travel and nightclubs. But I think when we look as a student union, it's about the things that are pressing now and in the future that aren't necessarily being adequately addressed. We're living through probably one of the biggest student rent crises. We're living through a mental health crisis for students, and we're living through a job crisis for the graduate market. And I just don't think that these are things that are adequately being addressed.
Now, you're being polite about it, but is there a little bit of you that thinks, look, this is a disease that is most serious for people who are older. It's the old who are saying, you know, let me get back on my holiday, but it's your generation that are often suffering the most.
I think, you know, we've all had a collective responsibility throughout this time to, you know, look after each other as a community. But I think what's become apparent for a lot of us within higher education, especially students' unions, is that often students are being forgotten. You know, when you have national lockdown addresses and students and university students aren't being directly addressed, then there is a definite problem that students aren't being adequately given the resources.
Dame Irene Hayes, look, you have a business to run. You've got lots of people who want holidays, but there'll be some people looking at what's happened in, say, Australia or New Zealand and saying, look, if we can have a party here at home and we can enjoy ourselves and have some freedom, let's just forget the foreign travel for another year, shall we? Let's get on.
Okay, I think you might just be in the minority there, Nick, because as soon as people are able to do so, we know that they are absolutely desperate to travel. And travel they will. You know, we are an island nation of explorers. People want to get across and see some sunshine, they want to explore, they want to see new things, try new food. We know that travel is in the top 3 desirable purchases when we bounce back. So I am convinced that people will travel in the future.
The difficulty is they may bring back a disease without realising it, mightn't it? Greece, for example, last year it wasn't on the list of anybody's worries, but 1/5 of the cases of COVID brought back into this country last summer came from where? They came from Greece.
That's right. And clearly what we need to do is be very careful, and we need to listen to the advice from the scientists. But really, if you go to a reputable travel agent, and there are lots of them across the UK, they'll look after the 2 things which are most important. The first one is health and safety, and the second is financial security, and they'll do that for you.
Richard, let's come back home, focus back home again. What do you need? What do you need to be told? What guidance do you need to make your industry viable?
The sooner we know what's going to happen in terms of dates, the better it is for us.
And is this roadmap that we have at the moment not enough?
It's adequate for now, because the dates that have been set out, in England anyway, say no sooner than. So if it's going to be no sooner than 12th of April, then the sooner we know that actually it's 15th of April or 17th of April, the more we're able to plan and therefore bring the steps in to keep everybody going. But ultimately, the longer it goes on, the more difficult it is to stay viable. But we've just got to continue to work as hard as we possibly can. So when we do open, we make sure people have a really good time. As Dame Irene said, it will be safe. Everybody works very hard towards that, but it's really important that people have a good time. And so my aim, and the aim of everybody across the business, is just to keep the customer in mind and just keep innovating, keep doing new things to make sure that if they don't go abroad and they do stay here, or people come in from other countries, they have a brilliant time.
And safe.
Safe, every time.
Richard, Irene, Dorothy, thanks very much for joining us.
Well, let's put some of what we've just heard to the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Matt Hancock, who joins us now. Good evening, Matt Hancock. You must have heard some of the conversation we've just been having, of course, and frustration. I think there is a lot of frustration amongst many industries in terms of getting out there, getting life back to normal. And the question is, you know, we're in a vaccine centre here in Newcastle, 1,200 people being vaccinated every day. 28 million people in the UK have had their first jab now. The question is how much longer to wait until they get out there?
Well, it was really cheerful, Naga, listening to the to all those you've just been interviewing, because whilst of course there's frustration that comes from this disease and its consequences, there was just also this spirit of optimism and hope. And I think, you know, the vaccine brings that, doesn't it? So we've set out the roadmap with the not before dates, as you were just talking about. And the reason for that is we want to give people as much confidence as we can, but not say things that we'll then have to go back on. And, you know, this has been a real challenge all the way through the pandemic to get this balance right. How much certainty to give, yet how much to also to say, you know, this is what we're aiming to do, but we've got to keep an eye on the data. And I think people get that. I mean, everybody's learned throughout this pandemic, haven't they?
And yet, Matt Hancock, people will have heard the Prime Minister yesterday talking about a third wave in Europe crashing onto our shores. And they might think, is he trying to tell us something? Is he trying to tell us those dates cannot be met, that we shouldn't have those foreign holidays, that we shouldn't count on getting back to the bars and the restaurants?
Well, it's too early to know. And we're going to set out what we do know and what we think is wise next month, and not have international travel before the 17th of May. It's part of the so-called step 3, but we just don't know yet whether it's going to be safe to have large-scale international travel this summer. You know, I just heard you give the example of what happened in Greece last summer. You know, the places where we ended up seeing a lot of cases coming in from, you know, that was a problem. And you're right to frame this as, you know, things are going well here, thankfully. You know, today we've just seen the data saying there's fewer deaths than at this time of year normally. That's for the first time since the summer. The vaccine's rolling out really fast. Things are going okay. We're on track on that roadmap, but we've also got to make sure we protect the country in case things go wrong elsewhere, you know, where it's outside of our control.
I think what people have found most frustrating in this crisis is the uncertainty. Now, some of it just comes with this virus that we knew so little about. Wouldn't it be easier, though, for you to say, we know what happened last summer. We know this virus came from the ski slopes when it first came here in February last year. Just rule out the summer holidays abroad. Just do what the Australians have done and said, party here, forget those foreign holidays.
Well, it's too early to be able to make such a decision like that as well, because we've got the vaccine. You know, that is our big defense that we haven't had at any point until now. And, you know, it's clearly working. It's working domestically. If we see evidence that it's working against all the known new variants from abroad as well, then that makes it much easier. Because, of course, you know, I know people want foreign holidays. Of course they do. And we want to get out of these sorts of restrictions. But, you know, as we are willing to put them in place, if that's what's needed to keep people safe. And, you know, frankly, the collective spirit that the public have shown over the last year has been nothing short of remarkable. And we just got a bit longer to go.
Matt Hancock, today, a very significant day, of course, 1 year since the UK went into the first national lockdown. So we've had a year, and this time last year, I don't think any of us could have envisaged vaccination centres like the one we're in now and seen the progress. We also couldn't have envisaged that Britain would have one of the worst death rates in the world. You today have, you know, you've spoken to many media outlets and you've spoken about what needs to be learned, what has been learned. What have you learned in the last year about what went wrong and what you did wrong and that won't happen again?
Well, I think there's lots of lessons, Naga. I think it's a really important thing that we all need to do, to be constantly trying to learn and listening to alternative voices that are challenging what we've been doing. One of the things is, one of the things we had to learn in the first wave was that this disease passes on from one person to the next, often when you don't have any symptoms at all. So about 1 in 3 people have the disease and have no symptoms, and that makes it so hard to handle. We've learned about some of the rules, for instance, about how it's best to put the rules in place to keep people safe, yet allow a bit more freedom. So from next Monday, we're going to move to having the rule of 6. But unlike in the autumn, when we just had the pure rule of 6, you can't get together in groups bigger than 6, and that should all be outdoors. One of the problems that led to was large families saying, well, in that case, we still can't meet anybody as a family. So we're going to have the rule of 6 or 2 households meeting together. So we're constantly looking, whether it's at the science like asymptomatic transmission or at the rules that we put in place, because these are all judgments and difficult judgments, and we're constantly trying to learn how to handle this better. And crucially, we've got to learn for future pandemics as well. I mean, God forbid, but to make sure that we are better prepared, always looking forward.
Always looking forward. The doctor I spoke to at the beginning who treated the first virus patient said, don't be late. And isn't the truth, you were late in the spring, you were late in the autumn, you were late at Christmas. In some ways, you keep making the same mistake.
Well, I'm not sure that's fair. At Christmas, the biggest problem that we had was there was this new variant, the so-called Kent variant, that through all of the different calibrations of the rules that we had in place, which were working, they were working against the old variant, but they weren't working against the new one. So new things have come up all the way through this pandemic, and in a way, that's why learning is so important all the way through it as well.
Last word then, throw us ahead to next Christmas. You can't know for certain. We know you can't. There's no plan for then. But here I am with my mask. Do you think, are the experts telling you, even if we've opened up in the summer, we'll have to do these things? We'll have to have our masks, we'll have to distance, we'll have those plastic screens. We won't be rid of this, in other words, for quite some time.
Well, I think that we should be able to get COVID to a place a bit like seasonal flu is. Seasonal flu, comes every year, and it's something that we have a vaccination program for, and we can learn from the COVID vaccination to expand the flu vaccination program, and we then, and we manage it and we handle it. Now, I want to minimize flu as well. So there are things like washing your hands more often, or wearing face masks, which a year ago felt uncomfortable and now is totally normal for most of us on things like public transport. I think there will be things that are changed for the long term that will help us deal with both COVID and other diseases like flu, and things like, if you're feeling like you've got a bug that you might pass on, work from home if you possibly can. And don't go in and pass it on to your colleagues and just soldier on, as has been the old British way. And so I do think
we're going to leave it there, I'm afraid. But thank you very much indeed for taking the time to join us tonight.
Our final slice of lockdown life now. If you thought life was strange where you are, spare a thought for those on the Scottish island of Arran, which was completely shut off to the mainland apart from for essential travel.
The community rallied round and supermarket manager Liz McLean mobilised a volunteer army to ensure the elderly and the vulnerable could receive supplies and medicines.
The community here over in Arran's absolutely incredible. They're almost like family, we see them every day in the shop, so for me, you go out your way and you help people. If you can do it, you do it, and that's it. But there's so many other people on the island were helping out, even all the small local businesses, they were doing deliveries as well, which took a bit of pressure off us. The island was cut off the mainland and it was essential travel only. We had 2 boats a day. When the pandemic started, we just had 35 customers on average a week who would phone their orders in, but within a fortnight of it starting, we actually went up to 450 to 500 on average every week. The taxi drivers in Ireland, who are obviously very quiet, we took them in for home delivery drivers, and then we used the hospitality staff and they became our pickers and packers. The community here over in Arran's absolutely incredible. Can't fault them, everybody was in it together, we all worked hard with each other, everybody helped out. We had kids at the high school making them the shields for their faces. We had masks getting made with different people all around the island as well. They're handing them into the shop. I think it's been great to see the island in action.
Of course, tonight is also a moment to reflect on the past year and the thousands of people who have died in the pandemic. Behind every single loss, there's a story of sadness and, of course, grief.
Many of us paused for a minute at midday to remember all of those lives, and tonight communities are lighting candles and buildings are being lit yellow as beacons of hope for the future.
These are the scenes across the UK on this anniversary of the lockdown, the most sweeping change to our way of life since the Second World War.
And we're joined now by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, who is at Lambeth Palace tonight. Archbishop, good evening. Could you give us your thoughts on this significant day?
I think my first thought is one of grief and lament. People around the country, as you've shown in this really very moving and wonderful programme, have so many memories today, memories of those they've lost, of things they've lost, of contacts they've lost, being able to hug grandparents, to be with each other. That sense of uncertainty, anxiety, and we've learnt to be with each other and to support each other. And so with that grief and lament, I am praying for that sense of community to grow. My second thought is one of thankfulness. Thankfulness for those who've served us and helped us. Tears came to my eyes as you showed that wonderful story of the nurse who, walking out of hospital after missing the whole of March last year, and that remarkable sense of thankfulness to those who've cared for us and been with us and looked after us and are now giving us our jabs, which we really must take. And my third one is determination and hope. This is the time of year when Christians believe that Jesus rose from the dead, that death is a liar, that life overcomes, that Jewish people around the world will be celebrating Passover at almost exactly the same time. That sense of liberation, which is going to be so real. And Muslims will be celebrating the holy month of Ramadan, of drawing close to God. There is something that calls us to be spiritual and eternal, to build something with hope. And I feel a great sense of determination that we must change our future, our society, what it means to live together. So that, sorry, it's a long answer, Nick, but that's what's on my mind.
Lovely to hear your thoughts. Justin Welby, Archbishop of Canterbury, thank you.
And that is it from us in Newcastle. Thanks to all our guests who's joined us for this special programme. We're in tonight with the voices of the families who have lost loved ones in the pandemic. Many of them were unable to gather in person to grieve, to remember, to celebrate the lives of those the virus took away.
They turned to each other online to form support groups, like Alone Together. It was started by Liam Mayer from Devon in memory of his father David. They've created a virtual choir of families across the UK, and we're going to leave you with a performance of their song, Thank You.
From everyone here in Newcastle, good night.
Bye-bye.